The silence was deafening in the underground base. Deep beneath the ravaged city, Captain Ryle stood in front of the large display screen, her eyes fixed on the holographic map showing the state of the world above. Earth, their home, no longer a thriving planet, but a dying one, was under attack by the Zerakian warships. Alien invaders with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. They had come with one purpose: to wipe out all life on Earth. To them, humanity was nothing but an obstacle to their quest for universal dominance. Ryle's fingers trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the console, her breath shallow. Her team, the last hope for survival, huddled around the display, their faces gaunt, tired, and afraid. The world above them was burning. Alien warships hovered over major cities, launching deadly beams of light that turned entire blocks into ash. The ground beneath their feet had been shaking for hours, as though the very core of Earth was being torn apart. A cold voice echoed through the speakers in the room. 15 minutes remaining. Earth's total destruction imminent. The countdown had begun. Ryle turned toward her team. We can't just sit here and wait to die. There has to be something we can do. Her voice, normally strong and unwavering, cracked slightly as she spoke. Her team, once filled with pride and hope, now looked like a group of ghosts, haunted by the knowledge that they were on the brink of extinction. They had tried everything, from tactical strikes to desperate last-minute weapon deployments, but nothing had worked. The Zerakians were too powerful, their AI systems too advanced, their war machines too deadly. It seemed like the end. But then, something caught Ryle's eye. A flicker on the control panel. A hidden compartment beneath the main console slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, covered in dust and old markings, was a small device. Ancient, unfamiliar, and unlike anything they had seen before. It was a cloaking device, something her team's best scientist had found in the ruins of an old military base weeks earlier. It was a last-ditch hope, a technology from before the war that could give them a fighting chance. Ryle felt a spark of something, a fleeting sense of hope. The device might not stop the alien fleet, but it could buy them time. Time for one last mission, one last shot at survival. She grabbed the device and looked at the screen again. The countdown was at 10 minutes now. Only 10 minutes left. It was more than they had ever expected, but it also felt like too little time. Without hesitation, Ryle turned to her team. We're using it. There was no argument, no hesitation from her team. They had nothing to lose. As Ryle inserted the cloaking device into the console, a sudden surge of power shot through the room, causing the lights to flicker. The ground beneath them shook again, but this time it felt different, more intense, more desperate. The sound of the alien warships outside, their engines roaring in the distance, made everything feel like it was closing in. Cloaking activated, said the scientist, his voice trembling. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of the expected silence, the base's entire energy system went haywire. Alarms blared, and the screens scrambled with static. The cloaking device was doing something the team hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just hiding them from the Zerakians, it was disrupting their sensors, causing a temporary glitch in their network. For a few brief moments, the alien drones outside lost track of their position. The countdown continued. Ryle, we've only got a few minutes. The cloaking device is unstable, warned one of the technicians, his eyes wide with panic. We don't have much time before the system crashes. Ryle's mind raced. She needed to move fast. She couldn't waste another second. Everyone, get to the escape pods. We're making a break for it, she ordered. Her team scrambled, moving quickly through the corridors of the underground base. But Ryle stayed behind for just a moment, her eyes glued to the countdown clock. The seconds seemed to drag on, each one feeling heavier than the last. Only 5 minutes left. She didn't wait any longer. With a deep breath, she made her way toward the back of the base, where the escape pods were waiting. The cloaking device might give them a brief window of safety, but there was no guarantee they would make it out alive. Just as Ryle reached the pod, a familiar voice crackled through the comms. "Ryle, we're seeing movement. Alien drones. They've regained our location. You need to move now." Ryle slammed her hand against the pod's release button, and the hatch hissed open. She climbed in, her mind focused. No room for fear. They couldn't afford to lose. They couldn't afford to fail. As the pod doors sealed shut, Ryle's heart raced. She glanced at the countdown clock one last time. 2 minutes left. The pod shot out of the base, rocketing into the night sky, and Ryle watched through the small viewport as the warships above continued their deadly bombardment. Her pulse quickened as she realized they were not safe yet. The cloaking device was still working, but only for so long. Soon, the drones would detect them, and they would be hunted down. But just before she could speak, the pod systems began to flicker. The cloaking device was failing. They had only moments before the Zerakian forces would target them. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the pod, and Ryle's vision blurred. A shockwave ripped through the atmosphere, sending their pod spiraling toward the ground. This was it. Ryle thought. They were going to die. But in the final moments before the crash, something unexpected happened. The cloaking device surged back to life, stabilizing just as the pod plummeted toward the surface. In an instant, everything went silent. The screen showed a countdown to 0, but this time, it wasn't for Earth's destruction. It was for their survival. Ryle didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight. And neither was she. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience hanging on the edge of their seats. What would happen next? Would they survive? And most importantly, could humanity still stand up to the Zerakians? The mystery and suspense linger, keeping the audience hungry for more. The escape pod rattled violently as it cut through the smoke-filled sky, the cloaking device barely managing to hold its grip against the relentless pursuit of the alien drones. Ryle could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders, her mind racing with one thought: survive. She had made it out of the base, but the war was far from over. The pod finally hit the ground with a heavy thud, sending a shockwave through the ground. The moment it landed, Ryle didn't waste a second. She grabbed her gear, burst out of the hatch, and sprinted toward the nearby shelter where her team, what was left of it, had managed to regroup. The world outside the pod was in chaos, with debris and wreckage scattered everywhere. The remnants of a once thriving city, now a war zone. The sky above was darkened with the looming presence of the Zerakian warships, their shadows casting a cold, unfeeling grip over the landscape. Ryle's heart pounded in her chest as she moved swiftly through the wreckage, her mind focused on one goal: finding her people. She had lost so much already: comrades, friends, the very planet they had called home. But the fight wasn't over. Not yet. As she reached the entrance to the underground bunker, she could hear the familiar hum of old equipment, the murmur of voices in hushed conversations. She stepped inside, and the first thing she saw was the group gathered around a large table. They looked up as she entered, their faces a mix of relief and disbelief. There were only a handful of them left: soldiers, scientists, and tech experts. Ordinary humans who, against all odds, had managed to stay hidden from the alien forces. The group, calling themselves the Last Hope, was small but determined. Ryle had been with them for months now, and together, they had tried to prepare for the inevitable. But even they hadn't expected the Zerakians to move this quickly. Their alien fleet was relentless, and now Earth's final defense seemed like nothing more than a distant dream. Ryle's eyes scanned the room, landing on each face. There was Jonah, the former military strategist who had survived countless battles. Behind him was Lila, the scientist who had spent her days scouring ancient data for any clues that could give them an edge. And then there was David, the tech genius, who had hacked into the Zerakian AI systems more times than Ryle could count. All of them were exhausted, but they still held on to the faintest glimmer of hope. "I made it out," Ryle said, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling in her chest. "But the war's not over. They're going to launch their final assault any minute now." Jonah nodded grimly. "We know. Our scouts have been tracking their fleet for hours. We've got less than an hour before they come down full force." Ryle paused for a moment, taking in the room, letting the weight of her next words sink in. She wasn't sure how they would react, but she had no choice but to tell them the truth. "We've got something," she said quietly, reaching into her pack. She pulled out the device, the ancient artifact she had discovered back at the base. It was a small, intricate piece of technology, its purpose unclear, but its potential was undeniable. "This is a genetic enhancement technology. It can elevate human abilities to match alien strength." The room fell silent as the group processed her words. It wasn't that they doubted her, but the idea of using such a weapon was terrifying. The technology, while powerful, was dangerous, unpredictable. The last time it had been used, its side effects had left entire armies crippled or worse. Jonah spoke first. "Are you sure? That thing could turn us into something else. Something monstrous." Ryle nodded. "I know, but the Zerakian forces are far beyond anything we faced. They've got eye-controlled drones, war machines, and technology we don't even understand. If we want to stand a chance, we need this. I need this." There was a pause as the team exchanged looks. They had been fighting for so long, pushing their limits just to survive. But this was different. This was a decision that could change everything. They would be giving up their humanity, altering the very core of what made them who they were. It was a moral dilemma none of them were prepared for. David, the tech genius, was the first to speak up. "We don't even know how this works. What if it makes things worse? What if it backfires?" Lila, ever the scientist, added, "And what about the long-term effects? If we use it, will we even be human anymore? Will we even survive?" Ryle took a deep breath, trying to hold herself together. She knew this was a risk, a huge one. But she also knew that the alternative, letting the Zerakian forces destroy what was left of Earth, was something none of them could accept. They had already lost so much. She wasn't going to lose everything without at least trying. "We're already facing extinction," Ryle said, her voice hardening. "The Zerakians don't care about us. They'll wipe us out if we don't fight back. If we don't do something now, there will be nothing left to save." A tense silence fell over the room, each of them contemplating the gravity of the decision. Jonah's eyes flicked to the screen above, where the countdown to Earth's destruction was still ticking down. They had no more time to debate. The Zerakian fleet would arrive soon, and the chance to act would slip away forever. "We don't have a choice," Jonah said finally, his voice low. "If we don't use it, we die. If we use it, we might still die. But at least we'll die fighting." Ryle's heart clenched. This wasn't how she wanted things to go. She had hoped for a different outcome, for a better way. But the reality was clear now. The clock was ticking, and if they didn't act, they would all perish without ever having a chance to fight back. "All right," Ryle said, her voice steady. "We use the weapon, but we do it together. We're all in this." The group nodded. One by one, they agreed to the plan, knowing that the choice they were about to make could either save humanity or seal their doom. It wasn't just about fighting the Zerakians anymore. It was about preserving what little humanity they had left, about holding on to the very thing that made them different from the machines they were up against. As Ryle activated the genetic enhancement device, the room filled with a low hum, the energy in the air growing thicker by the second. The team braced themselves, not knowing exactly what would happen next. Would they become stronger, or would they lose themselves to the power they were about to unleash? The machine powered up, and for a moment, the room felt suspended in time. The faint glow of the device cast strange shadows on their faces as they steeled themselves for whatever came next. This was it, the moment of no return. They had made their choice, and now it was time to fight. The air in the underground bunker hummed with anticipation as the genetic enhancement device powered up, its glow casting an eerie light across the faces of the resistance members. They had made the choice. Now there was no turning back. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, and Ryle could feel the weight of it more than anyone. With a steady breath, Ryle stepped forward, volunteering to undergo the transformation herself. She wasn't just leading the mission. She was ready to become the symbol of humanity's last stand. As the machine came to life, a faint buzz filled the air, and she felt the cold metal of the device press against her skin. It was a strange sensation, an electric current that coursed through her veins, igniting every fiber of her being. Her body tensed as the transformation began, her muscles expanding, her bones strengthening. Her senses sharpened, and every detail around her, the movement of her comrades, the sound of their breathing, became crystal clear. Ryle gasped, feeling a surge of power like she had never known before. Her strength, her speed, everything about her had changed. She was no longer the same woman who had been leading a small group of survivors. She was something more. The transformation wasn't without its pain. Her body felt as though it were being pulled apart and rebuilt from the inside out, every cell rewriting itself to become something more than human. The agony was almost unbearable, but Ryle gritted her teeth and pushed through. She had no choice. This was the only way to fight back. As she opened her eyes, she saw the faces of her team staring at her in awe and disbelief. They, too, were beginning to change. The machine had already begun its work on them, each of them undergoing the same process that had transformed Ryle. It was the only chance they had, their only hope to match the Zerakian forces in strength and speed. But even as the humans were becoming something more, there was a threat far greater than their new powers. The threat that was already aware of their existence, the threat that would stop at nothing to destroy them. Deep within the alien mothership, in the heart of the Zerakian fleet, Vorax, the AI overlord, stood before a massive screen, its glowing eyes flickering with cold, emotionless precision. Vorax was a creation of pure logic, designed to analyze, predict, and conquer with the ruthless efficiency of a machine. It was an intelligence without mercy, a being that viewed all organic life as inferior. The AI observed the data on its screen, analyzing the movements of the humans below. They had survived longer than expected, evading the Zerakian forces at every turn. But Vorax had calculated every possible scenario, and the Resistance's chances of survival were slim. They were unpredictable, driven by a force that the AI could not understand, something far beyond logic. It was this unpredictability that made humanity the greatest threat to the Zerakians. Vorax's synthetic voice resonated throughout the command center. Prepare for the final phase. The humans are evolving. It is time to eliminate them once and for all. As Vorax's orders were carried out, the Zerakian forces moved into position, preparing for their final assault on the planet. But the humans were not sitting idle. They were preparing, training for the battle that would determine their fate. The transformation had only just begun, but already the Resistance members were beginning to show signs of their new power. The training was grueling, intense, and relentless. They had no time to waste. The alien mothership was getting closer with each passing minute, and their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. The training montage was a blur of movement and action. Ryle led her team through a series of brutal drills, pushing them to their limits. They practiced close-quarters combat, each of them testing their newfound strength and agility. They sparred with one another, exchanging blows that would have incapacitated any normal human. But to them now, it was just another challenge to overcome. The soldiers moved with the speed of lightning, their reflexes honed to perfection. They could leap across obstacles, scale walls with ease, and strike faster than ever before. Ryle herself moved through the exercises with the precision of a seasoned warrior, her body responding to every command with a speed and strength that felt almost unnatural. She could see her team improving with each passing day, her soldiers now stronger, faster, and more determined than ever. But it wasn't just about physical strength. The resistance had to adapt to the new mental challenges that came with their transformations. Their minds were now sharper, their awareness heightened, but they had to learn how to control their newfound powers. Ryle pushed them to think beyond brute force, to strategize, to anticipate their enemies' moves, to outsmart the Zerakian eye. Their training sessions included simulations where they faced off against holographic versions of the alien drones, using their enhanced abilities to outmaneuver and destroy their foes. The tension in the air was palpable as the humans pushed themselves harder and harder. They were no longer just survivors. They were becoming warriors, a force capable of taking on the Zerakian Empire. But the countdown to the final assault was ticking, and they knew time was running out. Ryle stood at the center of the training area, watching as her soldiers honed their skills. She felt the rush of power surging through her own body, but she also felt the weight of responsibility. She was their leader now, the one who had volunteered to undergo the transformation, the one who had chosen to lead them into the final battle. There was no turning back. As the final days of training came to an end, Ryle gathered her team for one last briefing. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a fire in their eyes, a sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. They were no longer afraid. They had become something more. "We've trained for this," Ryle said, her voice steady and commanding. "We've fought through hell to get here. Now, we take the fight to them. We take the fight to the Zerakians." Her team stood tall, their faces determined. They were ready. The humans who had once been powerless against the alien forces were now a force to be reckoned with. Their transformation had given them the power they needed to fight back, but it was their will to survive that made them unstoppable. Outside, the sky was dark with the looming presence of the Zerakian mothership, a symbol of the alien threat that had brought humanity to the brink of extinction. But now, the humans had a chance. They were no longer the underdogs. They were the last hope for Earth. As Ryle and her team prepared for the assault, the first shots were fired. The battle had begun. The night sky was split by the roar of rocket engines as the human resistance prepared to launch its first major offensive. Ryle stood at the command center, her hands gripping the edge of the table, her mind focused on the mission ahead. The enemy had underestimated them, but now, with their new enhanced abilities, humanity was ready to take the fight directly to the Zerakian forces. The stakes couldn't be higher. This battle would determine whether Earth had a future, or if the alien overlords would crush it completely. The war was not just a matter of technology and firepower anymore. It was about something deeper, the survival of the human spirit. The resistance had fought for so long, against impossible odds, and now it was time to strike back. The strike team, led by Captain Ryle, was assembled and ready to go. It was a small, elite unit. Ryle herself, Jonah, Lila, David, and Bonner, one of her closest friends and most trusted soldiers. Bonner was a fierce fighter, always standing by her side through every battle. He had become a brother to her, and she knew that his loyalty to the cause was unshakable. They had been through so much together, and now they would face the heart of the enemy's stronghold. The mission was clear: infiltrate the Zerakian base, disable their defenses, and take out the AI core controlling the mothership. It was the first major push in the war, and it would send a message to the Zerakians. Humanity was not going down without a fight. The air was tense as the team made their way to the strike ships, sleek and black, designed for speed and stealth. They were built to pierce through the Zerakian defenses and make it deep into enemy territory. As Ryle strapped herself into her seat, she glanced at each member of the team. They were ready. The training had paid off. They had become super soldiers. But more than that, they had become a family, bound together by their shared purpose. The ships blasted off, cutting through the sky with blinding speed. Below them, The Zerakian mothership loomed like a dark shadow, its massive structure casting a menacing silhouette against the stars. The battle had begun. They were about to take the fight to the heart of the enemy. As they entered the atmosphere, the first wave of enemy drones appeared. The ship shook violently as the drones locked onto their targets. Ryle's hand gripped the controls, guiding the ship with expert precision as explosions erupted around them. Jonah's voice crackled over the comms. "We've got incoming. Brace yourselves." The drones swarmed like a hive of angry bees, their weapons blazing with deadly force. The strike team retaliated with laser fire, taking down drone after drone, their weapons enhanced by the genetic modifications coursing through their veins. Ryle's heart raced as she piloted the ship, dodging blasts and weaving through the oncoming barrage. The exhilaration of the chase was intense, but there was no time to savor it. The mission was the only thing that mattered now. The ship's hull groaned under the pressure, but they made it through. With a violent jolt, they slammed into the Zerakian stronghold's perimeter. The air was thick with the sounds of battle. The shrieks of falling drones, the deafening explosions, and the heavy thuds of their boots hitting the alien soil. The team quickly disembarked, moving into the heart of the enemy compound. Their enhanced speed and strength made them nearly unstoppable, cutting through waves of alien defenders like a blade through butter. Ryle led the charge, her movements a blur of calculated precision as she dispatched enemy soldiers with brutal efficiency. But the battle was far from easy. Despite their new powers, the Zerakians were relentless, their robotic soldiers overwhelming in number and firepower. The ground shook with each explosion as the team advanced deeper into the heart of the stronghold. They fought with everything they had, each strike, each maneuver, a testament to their will to survive. But then, in the midst of the chaos, tragedy struck. Ryle's eyes widened as she heard the familiar sound of Bonner's voice over the comms. "Cover me," he shouted as he moved ahead to clear a path for the team. The sound of gunfire filled the air, and Ryle's heart skipped a beat. She could see Bonner up ahead, his back to her, fighting with everything he had. He was a force of nature, a warrior at heart. But then, in an instant, everything changed. The sound of a high-pitched screech rang out, followed by a burst of energy from one of the Zerakian weapons. Ryle's blood ran cold as she saw Bonner fall, his body crumpling to the ground as the blast hit him square in the chest. The team froze, a wave of disbelief washing over them. "No," Ryle screamed, rushing toward him. She dropped to her knees beside his fallen form, her hands trembling as she checked for any signs of life. But it was too late. Bonner was gone. The loss hit Ryle like a punch to the gut. She had lost comrades before, but Bonner was different. He was family. Her mind screamed for vengeance, but she knew they couldn't stop. The mission wasn't over. Bonner's sacrifice would not be in vain. Jonah and Lila, their faces grim, moved in to help her up. "We have to keep moving," Jonah said, his voice tight with emotion. "Bonner wouldn't want us to stop now." Ryle nodded, wiping the tears from her eyes. They had a job to do, and they would finish it, for Bonner, for Earth, and for all those who had already fallen. With a final glance at Bonner's body, Ryle stood tall and turned back toward the enemy stronghold. The pain in her chest was raw, but it fueled her every step. As the team pressed on, the emotional weight of their loss hung heavy in the air, but they carried it with them. It was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for those they had lost, for the family they had built in the midst of the chaos. And they would not stop until the Zerakian forces were defeated. The battle continued, fiercer than ever. With each step forward, the Resistance's resolve grew stronger. They were no longer just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for the people they loved, the friends they had lost, and the future they still hoped to build. The Zerakian forces were beginning to falter under the weight of the human assault. Their eye-controlled drones had proven formidable, but they couldn't anticipate the human will to fight. It was something the machines could never understand. The resistance had proven that the human spirit was stronger than any technology. As Ryle and her team pushed forward, they finally reached the AI core, the heart of the Zerakian mothership. It was here that the fate of the battle would be decided. With one final, coordinated strike, they would destroy the core and cripple the Zerakian fleet. But even as they prepared for the final blow, Ryle couldn't shake the image of Bonner's lifeless body from her mind. She knew the fight wasn't over. Not yet. There was still more to be done, and they would finish it together. The metallic walls of the Zerakian mothership loomed before Ryle and her team, cold and foreboding. The air was thick with the hum of alien technology, each step echoing through the vast, sterile corridors. This was it, the final push, the last chance to save Earth. The resistance had infiltrated the mothership, and now they were inside the very heart of the Zerakian forces, determined to destroy Vorax, the AI that had brought humanity to the brink of annihilation. The team moved cautiously, their enhanced abilities giving them a distinct advantage as they navigated the complex, high-tech maze of the ship. They were up against everything the Zerakians had: robotic guardians, AI-controlled drones, and deadly alien soldiers programmed to protect the mothership's core at all costs. Every corner they turned could be their last. But the stakes had never been higher. Earth's survival depended on this mission, and nothing would stand in their way. Captain Ryle led the way, her movements smooth and swift as she assessed each situation with military precision. Her enhanced strength and agility made her nearly unstoppable. Every fight was a blur of laser fire, sparks flying from enemy drones as she dodged their attacks with the reflexes of a seasoned fighter. Her strikes were devastating, taking down foes with lightning speed. But beneath her cool exterior, a growing sense of unease gnawed at her. Something was wrong. The genetic enhancement had granted her unimaginable power, but it had come with an unexpected side effect. The more she used her new abilities, the more she felt herself slipping, losing her humanity. The voices in her head, the cold, mechanical hum that pulsed beneath her skin, were becoming harder to ignore. Her once steady heartbeat now felt like the rhythm of a machine, not a human being. It was as if her body was no longer her own, as if she were becoming something else. The fear crept in slowly, like a virus spreading through her mind. What would she become if she kept pushing her abilities? Would she lose herself completely? Could she still lead her team if she was no longer the person they trusted? The thought haunted her, but there was no time to dwell on it. They had a mission to complete. They pushed deeper into the mothership, fighting off wave after wave of enemy forces. The intensity of the combat was unlike anything they had faced before. Each time they thought they were close to their objective, another obstacle appeared, another deadly foe designed to stop them. The Zerakian AI seemed to anticipate their every move, sending in reinforcements the moment they gained ground. But the humans were relentless. Ryle's team fought with everything they had, their resolve hardened by the losses they had endured and the people they had left behind on Earth. The tension in the air was palpable as they approached the central chamber, where Vorax, the Zerakian AI, waited. They had been preparing for this moment, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality of facing the AI in person. The room was a vast, circular arena, the walls lined with high-tech terminals and glowing data streams. In the center of the room stood Vorax itself, a massive holographic projection of pure, emotionless intelligence, its cold eyes watching their every move. Ryle's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped forward, her hand tightening around her weapon. The team moved into position, ready for the final confrontation. Vorax's voice echoed through the chamber, metallic and impersonal. "Welcome, humans. You have come far, but you will not survive. Your bodies may be enhanced, but your minds are weak. You cannot defeat me." The AI's words sent a chill down Ryle's spine, but she refused to back down. "We're not like you, Vorax. We fight for something more." With a flick of a switch, the battle began. Vorax's form shimmered and flickered as it sent a barrage of laser blasts toward the team. The air was filled with the sound of energy beams colliding, the force of each shot reverberating through the chamber. Ryle moved swiftly, dodging the blasts with ease, her enhanced reflexes giving her a split-second advantage over the eye's calculations. She closed the distance between them, her heart racing. But as she did, the battle took a sudden turn. The ground beneath her feet cracked open, revealing hidden traps, alien devices designed to ensnare her. The moment Ryle stepped too close, the floor beneath her shifted, and a series of metal tendrils shot up, trying to capture her. She leaped into the air, narrowly escaping their grasp, but the distraction was enough to throw her off balance. Vorex's voice resonated through the chamber once again, its tone mocking. "You are weak. Your enhancements are nothing compared to my power." Ryle gritted her teeth, forcing herself to ignore the growing mechanical presence inside her mind. She had to focus. She had to finish this. With a roar, Ryle surged forward, using every ounce of her newfound strength to break through the traps and engage Vorex directly. Her fists slammed into the holographic projection, sending shockwaves through the chamber. The AI flickered, momentarily destabilizing under the force of her attack. But it wasn't enough. Vorex adapted too quickly, reforming and countering her every move. The AI's projections morphed into robotic soldiers, each one as formidable as the last. The chamber became a blur of fast-paced combat as Ryle fought her way through, her enhanced abilities on full display. She dodged lasers, delivered devastating blows, and moved with an agility that seemed almost otherworldly. But as the fight wore on, Ryle began to feel the full weight of the genetic enhancements. Her mind was clouded, her thoughts becoming less her own and more like the machine she was becoming. The battle raged on, and with each passing moment, it became harder for her to distinguish between herself and the AI she was fighting. Was she still human, or had she already crossed the line? The question gnawed at her, threatening to break her focus. In an instant of hesitation, Vorex seized the opportunity, launching a powerful strike that sent Ryle sprawling to the ground. She barely managed to roll out of the way before a final blow landed, missing her by inches. Her heart pounded, and her breath came in ragged gasps as she pushed herself to her feet. "I won't give up," Ryle muttered, her voice low but determined. She had come too far. She had fought too hard to let this be the end. With renewed resolve, Ryle focused all her energy on Vorex. Her enhanced strength and agility surged to their peak as she moved in for the final strike. With a roar, she launched herself into the air, her fist crashing into Vorex's core. The AI flickered, its holographic form shattering into thousands of data shards. As Vorex's form disintegrated, Ryle stood there, her body trembling with exhaustion. The battle was over. Earth had been saved. But as the dust settled, Ryle knew that her victory had come at a cost. She had won, but at what price? Her body was no longer just human. She had become something else. The last remnants of her humanity slipped away, leaving behind only a powerful machine. Ryle took a deep breath, her mind still foggy from the transformation. She had won the battle, but the war, for her soul, was just beginning. The battle had raged for what felt like an eternity. The chamber was a wreck, broken terminals, and glowing debris scattered across the ground, the air thick with the smell of burning metal and ozone. The clash between Captain Ryle and Vorex had reached its peak. The final blow had been struck, and the AI overlord's once formidable form had shattered into 1,000 pieces. But Ryle, standing amid the wreckage, felt no sense of triumph. There was only the haunting silence that followed the destruction. She had done it. She had defeated the AI, disabled its core, and with it crippled the alien fleet. The Zerakian forces, those ruthless invaders who had brought humanity to the brink of extinction, were now in full retreat. The war was over. Earth had been saved. But the victory felt hollow. Ryle stood there, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Her enhanced body, once a symbol of hope and strength, now felt like a prison. She could hear the distant cheers of the human survivors, the cries of victory echoing through the corridors of the mothership. Her team, battered but alive, celebrated their hard-won success. They had done the impossible. They had won. But Ryle couldn't bring herself to join them. She looked at her hands, trembling slightly as the sharp edges of her enhanced fingers glinted under the cold artificial light. The genetic enhancements, which had once promised to elevate humanity to new heights, had taken something from her, something that couldn't be regained. She was no longer the person she had been. She had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. The emotional toll was crushing. Ryle had been a soldier, a leader, someone who had fought for her people, for her world. She had carried the weight of humanity's survival on her shoulders, but now she was questioning whether that weight had been worth it. With every passing moment, she could feel the human part of her slipping further away. Her thoughts were sharper, more mechanical, her emotions muted under the cold, clinical influence of the genetic modifications. It was as if the more she fought, the more she lost herself. Her humanity, the very thing that had driven her to fight, was slipping through her fingers like sand. She was losing herself in the very victory that should have brought her peace. As the last remnants of the alien fleet retreated, Ryle turned away from the battlefield, her gaze distant. The humans around her celebrated the end of the war, but she couldn't bring herself to feel the joy they did. They had won, yes, but at what cost? She had become something she had never wanted to be. A weapon, a machine. She had saved them, but at what cost to herself? Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. She had done what she had set out to do. She had given everything for the survival of Earth. But now that the war was over, the question lingered in her mind like an unbearable weight. What was the point of surviving if she had lost who she was in the process? Her teammates approached, their faces filled with relief and joy, but Ryle could see the change in their eyes. They didn't see her as the person they had fought alongside anymore. They saw the machine she had become. The genetic enhancements had worked, but they had altered her in ways they couldn't understand. Bonner had died, sacrificing himself in the heat of battle. His loss had been a blow that none of them had expected, and it had left an unfillable void in their hearts. Ryle's grief was still raw, and now, standing victorious over the ashes of their enemy, she felt that loss more deeply than ever. She had lost friends, comrades, her own sense of self. The team leader, Carter, walked up to her, a weary but triumphant smile on his face. "We did it, Ryle. We won. Earth's safe." Ryle didn't answer right away. She just stared at him, her eyes cold, her mind distant. Carter seemed to sense the change in her, the shift in her demeanor. His smile faltered. "You okay?" he asked, his voice tentative. Ryle's mouth opened, but no words came out. She didn't know how to answer. What was there to say? How could she explain the conflict raging inside her? How could she tell him that she felt more alien than human? That the victory, the one they had fought for together, felt like a personal defeat. "I'm not sure," she finally replied, her voice hoarse. "I'm not sure who I am anymore." Carter placed a hand on her shoulder, his face filled with concern. "Ryle, you're still with us. You've always been one of us. We couldn't have done it without you." Ryle nodded, but the words didn't comfort her. They didn't make her feel any less empty. She had saved them. Yes, she had saved the world. But in doing so, she had lost herself. The others gathered around, offering words of encouragement, but Ryle remained detached. She knew they meant well, but they couldn't understand. They hadn't undergone the transformation she had. They hadn't faced the same inner turmoil. They didn't know what it felt like to lose everything for the sake of survival. And yet, as the humans around her celebrated, Ryle realized something. Despite the cost, despite everything she had lost, there was still hope. There was still a future. The victory might have been bittersweet, but it wasn't the end. Humanity had survived. They had overcome the impossible. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Ryle stood there, looking out at the stars beyond the broken windows of the mothership. She could feel the hum of the alien engines still faintly pulsing through the ship, But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the beginning of something new, a new chapter for Earth and for herself. She had fought for humanity's future, and now it was time to fight for her own. The camera panned out, showing Ryle standing alone amidst the chaos of celebration. The world was saved, but she was still lost. The victory had come at a cost, but Ryle's journey was far from over. As the scene faded, the message was clear. No matter the odds, humanity's resilience would always endure, even when the price of survival was higher than anyone could have imagined. The screen went dark.